When Helldivers 2 first launched, it was hailed as a breath of fresh air in the co-op shooter genre. Players were drawn in by its chaotic yet tactical combat, the thrill of calling down stratagems, and a sense of camaraderie that made every mission feel like a cinematic and desperate fight for survival. However, as time went on, cracks started to appear. Balancing issues, questionable design choices, and monetization tactics have slowly chipped away at what once felt like a near-perfect game. One of the biggest issues with Helldivers 2 right now is its approach to content updates. Instead of carefully crafting new weapons, armor, and boosters, the developers have chosen to go for a quantity over quality approach. New items are frequently being added, but many of them feel unbalanced, underwhelming, or outright unnecessary, like the throwing knife for example. This has led to a bloated experience where meaningful progression is drowned out by a flood of mediocre additions. Sometimes when you boot up the game and check out the new war bonds, you will be hit with a ton of new weapons and armors. This makes the weapon list feel almost overwhelming because there are so many, and some weapons even look kinda similar in terms of appearance. Live service games often struggle with balancing new content with meaningful progression. Helldivers 2 is sadly no exception. The sheer number of weapons and armor sets being added makes it difficult to feel attached to any of them. Unlike games that carefully introduce new gear to shake up the meta in a balanced way, Helldivers 2 floods players with content and nerfs that often feel redundant. For example, they randomly nerfed the R36 Eruptor rifle, which was introduced as a powerful primary weapon firing micro missiles with area of effect explosive damage. However, due to its unpredictable shrapnel causing unintentional team kills, the developers removed the shrapnel effect, increasing direct explosion damage instead. This greatly altered the weapon's effectiveness against groups of smaller enemies, leading some players to seek alternatives for crowd control. You know what would actually solve these weapon problems? A proper weapon customization system, something that Helldivers 1 already had. Instead of cluttering the game with multiple versions of the same weapon, like different Liberator rifles with incendiary or penetrative rounds, why not just let players modify the base Liberator and put on attachments? That way the developers wouldn't need to release entirely new guns just to introduce minor variations. In my opinion, they took the wrong approach here. A better strategy would have been to introduce attachments and upgrades for existing weapons first, keeping the sandbox balanced while maintaining variety. Then new weapons could have been added over time in a meaningful way. This would have been a true quality over quantity approach, but instead we're stuck with like 5 different variations of the Liberator that could have just been one single customizable rifle. But at the end of the day, maybe this was intentional. A shiny new gun is simply a bigger incentive for people to spend real money than a small attachment would be. After all, a full weapon feels like a more substantial purchase, even if it's just a slight variation of something we already have. With so many new additions, balancing has become kind of a nightmare. Some weapons feel completely overpowered while others are almost useless. The same applies to stratagems and armor, making the gameplay feel less tactical and more like a chaotic mess. This is disappointing because ideally every weapon should have a viable place in the sandbox rather than becoming obsolete or objectively inferior whenever a new one is introduced. A well-balanced sandbox leads to better gameplay. On top of that, the repetitive mission structures and lack of innovation in objectives has started to get stale, and it's causing fatigue among players such as myself who once found the game fresh and engaging. They also added a vehicle a few months ago after almost a year of waiting. Unfortunately, its controls are a mess. Driving feels like you're on ice with an overly sensitive steering system that makes even small turns risky. If you try to turn at a high speed, the vehicle is almost guaranteed to flip over instantly. This is a huge problem in a game where quick reflexes and precise movement are key. When you're in the middle of a battlefield and need a fast getaway, fighting against the controls can be the difference between survival and death. It's disappointing that after such a long wait, the vehicle they finally added often feels more like a liability than a game-changing tool. A major turning point for Helldivers 2 was the controversy surrounding PlayStation Network account requirements. At launch, players on PC could enjoy the game without needing a PSN account. However, an update introduced a mandatory PSN login, sparking outrage in the community. Many players felt this was an unnecessary restriction, especially for a game that had already built a strong PC player base. The backlash was so severe that Sony was forced to reverse their decision. While this controversy happened months ago, its ripple effect continues to shape the community's trust or lack thereof. It didn't just cause a temporary outrage, it fundamentally damaged the relationship between the players and the developers. Since then, every update or policy shift has been met with heightened skepticism as players fear more bad decisions may follow. Another issue is the lack of clear communication from the developers. Players often feel left in the dark about upcoming updates, balance changes, and the overall direction of the game. When issues arise, response responses can be slow or vague, leaving the community frustrated and uncertain about the game's future. For example, when the R36 Eruptor was nerfed, there was barely any explanation beyond a brief patch note. Players were left speculating about why the changes were made and whether future weapons would suffer the same fate. Similarly, new features and content updates seem to appear out of nowhere, with little prior warning or transparency about the reasoning behind certain design choices. Community feedback also seems to be inconsistently acknowledged. While some issues get addressed quickly, like certain game-breaking bugs, other concerns such as balance adjustments and the overwhelming flood of new gear are either ignored or met with minimal responses. This inconsistency has led to frustration among players who feel like their voices aren't being heard. Additionally, the developers often tease upcoming content but fail to provide clear timelines or details. This has led to a cycle of hype followed by disappointment when updates don't live up to expectations. For a live service game, maintaining an open dialogue with the player base is crucial, yet Helldivers 2 continues to struggle with this. Helldivers 2 had the potential to be one of the greatest cooperative shooters of its time. However, its commitment towards quantity over quality, poor balancing, and the PSN controversy have put its future at risk. Unless changes are made, the game could continue its downward spiral, leaving behind a community that once had high hopes for it. The question now is, can it be saved, or is Helldivers 2 truly falling apart? Thanks for watching and taking the time to hear my thoughts on the state of Helldivers 2. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, feel free to leave a like. It really helps the channel grow. I'd also love to hear your take in the comments. Do you think Helldivers 2 can make a comeback, or is the damage already done? Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.